everybody. Welcome to another Spotlight interview. We've got another great guest for us today. It's Dana Ben David. She is a serial entrepreneur. Wait till you hear what this lady does. It'll knock your socks off, and I think we're going to have a great conversation. Dana, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, George. I'm happy to chat with you.
So I alluded at the intro that you are a multi-entrepreneur. You've got a few things going. Maybe give us a rundown of some of the projects that you're working on.
Sure. So I'm one of the co-founders of a pet wellness brand called HealthyBud. And today that takes up the majority of my time, to say the least. But I am also an artist. I have, it's almost like a double life. I perform under the artist name Ver, and I'm a singer and a voice actor, coming off a little bit of a cold. So the voice is a little bit, plugged up today, but
kind of husky. It's cool. I like it.
Yeah. So that's, my world is music and dogs, and it's been that way for around 5 years now, and always been, I would say, like, working for myself for most of my life and trying to figure out a way that I could make my day-to-day fit my own personal aspirations and what I like kind of strive to do on a day-to-day basis, working just for, my own pace and to the beat of my own drum. And it's been a lot of work, but I feel like I've finally got to the point where there's a really nice hum. So it's the synergy is good between both, and it's finally kind of working.
Okay. So I ask this a lot. So audience, forgive me. When I talk to people who are entrepreneurs, especially those who have been entrepreneurs for a long time, one of the things I ask is like, what got you into it? Oftentimes it's family members, it's environment, it's a mentor. What was it for you?
It's funny because I think, so my parents have worked together. I work with my partner, by the way, my husband, and my parents have worked together. My grandparents have worked together. And I feel like it's just in my blood at this point, but they never pushed it on me, actually. So maybe it's just subconsciously, it's been something that I've been exposed to. But I didn't mean to get into the pet space. That was almost situational. Like it wasn't like I've been wanting to make dog treats since I was 8 years old at all. So it's funny. Like,
okay, so conversely, what did you want to do when you were 8 years old?
I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to be on stage.
Okay.
I wanted to perform for people. Yeah, and just experience the world of connecting through music. And it's just kind of been that common thread in my life since I was, my parents sat me at a piano at 3 years old, and that was my introduction into the world of music. And
so you were always entertaining at family gatherings and everything. Were you that kid?
No, honestly, I was shy, which is so funny.
Yeah?
I was shy about my music. I was kind of not like protective about it, but I think I had a lot of imposter syndrome, and I knew what I wanted to do just because it was within me, but I didn't feel good enough. And that, at least with my voice. And I started taking singing lessons when I was 11 or 12, and I worked on it for 10 years. And
wow.
Now I can say, like, I'm a confident performer, but I really wasn't. I think there are some people that are born with a really amazing talent. And then there are those that just have like big eyes and crazy like drive to just get somewhere. And I was like, I'm going to be a good singer, and I'm going to entertain, and I'm going to make a living out of it. And I just worked so hard, and I loved it. So I was like, it wasn't, singing lessons for me, that was like my therapy and my outlet. And I was so close to my mentor at the time, who was my vocal coach. And so that's what I wanted to do. And then, I ended up actually studying architecture. My world is a whole, like, I have like
when's the book coming out?
career ADD, like just passion ADD, just like I get very intrigued and curious about a lot of things. But architecture was also somewhat of an accident. I wanted to study at Berkeley to study voice and music, and my parents were like, maybe you should have a backup for like something.
How are you going to pay the bills?
How are you going to pay the bills? And also, like, really, you're gonna like so much money to learn songwriting? Like, I don't know about that. So I really didn't want to do anything else. I was very stubborn. I actually applied. It's hilarious. I applied to criminology, like, as a joke. I was literally at a school. I'm like, okay, you know what? Like, let's run the.
You threw a dart at the wall, and
threw a dart. Yeah, so I'm like, criminology. I'm not gonna end up doing it, but hilarious, like, talking point. But I was good at sciences and I still do it. I love interior design. I love homes and I grew up playing The Sims like religiously. So I'm like, science and Sims. No, but I thought it was a fascinating field. I'm like, I guess if I don't get into Berkeley, like that could be a cool thing to study. I got into Berkeley and it was so expensive and it just like obviously wasn't my path. And I got into McGill University and I studied architecture for 3 years. And then I said, when I graduate, I am going to go into the music world and pursue singing. And that's what I did. I moved to Toronto, I studied audio production and started working in the industry. And that kind of led me indirectly to HealthyBud because I was living with my boyfriend at the time. And that's where the idea was brewing. It was him and his friend who had the idea. But because of my experience, first of all, I'm the target demographic of the audience for that brand. And I'm someone who
How
grew up
many
with
dogs do you have?
I have one dog now, but I
Okay.
cannot handle more. But I grew up with one, and yeah, they just needed some help. And the way that things lined up, I was full-time working, in an entertainment agency, and I was busy and I loved it. But all of a sudden, as one the idea for Healthy Bud started to kind of brew, and I started to help out here and there, really on the side. Um, and then COVID happened, and I lost
Mm.
all my work in performing because there were no
Oh
gatherings.
boy.
So it was like, I'm like, well, I have time now. Like, how can I help? And like, I just went into
Give me
it.
something to do.
No, you know what? I was like a little bit, I thought it would last 2 months. So I'm like, I have some more time. And then one thing, turned to the next. And I really just fell in love with the brand and the mission. And it just goes to show that we're all so like multidimensional. And like if you let yourself explore certain sides of you, you can discover more, more sides of yourself. And I don't know, I wouldn't change a thing. Like it's funny. I took a lot of confidence to actually be comfortable with this path change. For a while, I was like serious imposter syndrome, like identity crisis. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is insane. I haven't like what's going on?
So
But
how do you deal with that? Because I think imposter syndrome. So there are a couple of things here. So there's imposter syndrome, and then there's the fight to do what you are passionate about versus what is prudent to do, like the
yeah,
the, the safe path. I mean, these are questions that starting out entrepreneurs, like new entrepreneurs, are always facing, right? Everyone's saying, oh, take the safe route, get a good job, get a good career, blah blah blah, or stick to one thing, don't flop around, stay focused. What advice would you give to a young entrepreneur who is struggling with those kinds of questions?
I think that's such a good question, and I wish that I had that answer like 5 years ago. So I hope I can give the answer justice and actually be helpful to some people. But I think there's a couple of things. I wouldn't recommend um, abandoning, ship all at once to start a new venture. Like there is something to say about like risk management. Like if you have a good idea, play with it. Start it on the side and see if you actually love it when the idea starts to demand work from you, because the ideation phase is always so exciting and so fun. And
It's
that's my
intoxicating.
yeah, it is. And that's my favorite part. I love beginnings. I love that starts of ideas. And that's where I'm also good at. In the execution, it's a little bit harder to like commit to like the hustle and the work
The
that isn't
grind.
and the grind. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think, we didn't all abandon what we were doing or leave our jobs or, I mean, everyone's situation was different, right? I wasn't involved at 100% from the beginning. So I actually was able to keep both things going. And also music is always at night and this is during the day. And I think the most important like lesson that I could share is like, trust your gut and listen to what you know you need as an individual. Like for me, I wouldn't thrive in the pet space if I had to give up that side of me. So like how do I find a way where these two can coexist? Whereas other people be like, so many times I've been told like if you don't go in 100%, you're not going to get anywhere relevant. And I'm like, that's such a crippling that's not how I'm
Tell
gonna
that to Richard Branson that runs over 200 companies.
I'm going to reject that idea. Exactly. But at the same time, though, when you're starting something out, you don't really know better. Like you trust the people that are maybe older, seem wiser, seem more experienced. But at the end of the day, it's like you know you best. And you have to, as cliched as it may sound, like just believe in, you know, yourself, and it's your storybook to write. Like so many people project their own insecurities on other people and their own desires that they wish they had done. And there's a lot of, you have to be you have to read the room well also when you take advice from people. But I think just knowing who you really are, and sometimes that takes years and we're always evolving, but knowing, being connected with what actually sparks joy in your life. And I think it took me a long time to realize um that I can be happy doing other things besides what I said in my mind is the be all end all for me. I was always labeling myself as a singer. So it's like, how could I ever be anything else? And then when COVID happened and I didn't have any of that, you almost realize,
Mm.
I don't have singing, or when I don't perform, who are you? And that was such a big wake up call. And you got to remove a lot of the ego. You got to remove a lot of these preconceived ideas that we've all made of ourselves to allow ourselves to grow and experience new things. So that was a big, like 2020 to 2023 were crazy formative years for me.
And a
Um,
lot of people.
I'm sure it really
Talk to me
brought.
about maybe some of your early influences, because it sounds to me like you had a lot of support early on to help you to find your footing, because you sound very secure on many levels. So what kind of supports were you able to put in place that kind of gave you this maneuverability, this freedom to kind of try different things?
I think support from my immediate family was always a huge part of it, right? Like even though my parents advised me to explore a safer path, they never ever said don't follow your passion or your dreams. They kind of instilled this value, like a little bit of caution and a little bit of, you know, um straying away from a little of the naivete in life and just opening up,
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, you're going to have to pay bills. How are you going to do that? Like at least have a plan. And support from my partner, that's a huge part of, I would say, like why I feel, especially in my business, confident to do both. He supports me wholeheartedly, and that sometimes you just need a little bit of validation externally as well. It really helps to know that people are cheering you on. And I would say, like, my parents have always been very supportive, as well as my partner. But you know it can be a very isolating path as well, because I
Yeah,
don't.
that's definitely something that's pretty common amongst entrepreneurs, and I think that it's important for successful entrepreneurs like yourself to share that
Yeah,
story, that don't buy into that whole, lonely entrepreneur, like grinding it out,
yeah.
by themselves. Like it's important to build a support structure around you.
And a
Um,
community, and there's a lot of community. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurial communities out there right now.
yep.
When I was kind of coming up into it all, it may be from my experience trying to come up as an artist, it does, you do kind of feel like it's just me against the world and I'm doing it alone. I'm very used to just doing things on my own and being a self-starter, and like just not relying on anybody else. No one's going to build your career for you, especially not in music. So I
No.
really got a lot of that learnings from breaking into the performance industry. Like when I studied audio production, I was the only female in my class. It was wild. There was nobody in that side of music. So there was definitely a lot of sexism, a lot of like, do you need help? Like are you okay? Do you know how to do these things? Can you
That's a
turn
lot of dials on that panel. Do you need
a
some help?
lot? There's a lot. How are you doing? So it kind of created this, gave me thicker skin. I think also in architecture school, every week we had something called a crit, and it's essentially where you took your designs and you put them up in front of the room for everybody to critique, and you just learn to take shit, and you learn to like not take it personally. So a lot of people say like you're nuts for going through such a specific career program, knowing that you didn't want to become an architect. And for me, I feel like it's actually, I think it's such an amazing field to study, even if you know
The
you
discipline is transferable. All the disciplines are
100%.
transferable.
I would say more in that program than others, right? Like it's you
You got
learn,
project management, you got critical thinking, you've got a lot of
oh my
things.
gosh, like how to work with deadlines, how to take criticism, how to be creative within confines of direction from, whether it's
Managing lots of different people in a project, that's also very
yeah,
critical.
left brain, right brain. Like I think that is extremely that was a really formative part of my younger, I guess, late teens, early 20s that actually ended up helping me for entrepreneurship. And I would have never kind of connected those dots together. But I would say
That's a
like
good point. It's a good point.
follow your curiosity is like actually that's my kind of like mantra. Like
But I'm hearing also discipline. There's
yeah.
discipline, there's
Oh
rigor
yeah. Oh my
there. I
gosh.
mean, your educational career, gave you a foundation of rigor. And I
Yeah.
think that there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are really good at their thing. They're really good at their whatever their particular skill is. And I'm hearing from you that there was a lot of benefit from getting this formal training that you could use to transfer to anything else that you were going to do.
100%. You never lose what you learn. Like that's the truth, right? You pick up so much information. We're still sponges. When you're a kid, you're like the sponge is the most absorbent. But like as you grow up, you're still always you're still always absorbing information, and it all kind of pieces together in such a beautiful way, in a way that you could never really predict. So that's something that I've really adapted almost as a mantra. Like you just never lose what you learn. I really have dabbled in so many different fields. And then I have these insecure moments of like, oh, you're a Jill of all trades and a master of none, and there's all these like that negative self-talk. But that's just part of being human too. I'm not going to say like, don't have those self-limiting beliefs. Like we have them. It's okay. We live in a tough time in this age of social
Got to
media.
manage them.
You're constantly bombarded with this like comparison syndrome. It's like, let's being easier on yourself. Like that is the biggest key, is just giving yourself grace and like being aware of how you're doing. Like that's the biggest thing. Like I know when I'm not good and I need a break.
Do you
And
find that the left brain, right brain thing that you were talking about, do you find that the fact that you have two careers, one which is, more business and marketing and finance, and then you have
yeah,
your other career, which is more artistic expression. Do you find those two things balance you? Like they kind of
yeah.
give you an outlet to deal with maybe
Oh,
some of
for
the
sure. Oh
anxiety
my
and
God.
stress?
100%. Oh my gosh. People always ask because I'll sing in front of tens of thousands of people and not like I'm not moved by. I love that. That doesn't stress me out at all. I, for me, that's my break. They're like,
Yeah.
how do you work all day and then go to a gig at night? I'm like, that is literally my release. It's where I'm like that's just like that's my thing. It's everyone's different. For me, that mix is the concoction I needed and that I've worked so many years to be able to do. And also I'm at the point with my artistry that it's a little bit more turnkey. Like I'm a professional with it. So I know how to manage it. I know how to manage client expectations. And, I've got it down pat, but that took 10 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and now I would say like if this was 5 years ago and I was doing HealthyBud and not as experienced and seasoned in the performing world, I wouldn't say that's the case. I think it'd be extremely stressful. So everything kind of lined up where it needed to, but I was working on this and kind of manifesting it or trying to manifest this world where they can both coexist, where the business can also, HealthyBud could also run without me there every second of the day, which it couldn't do for many years. And
Right.
that's what I worked so hard to do, is to build a team that were like extensions of my brain that can support me. We can work together, and then this can all work out in a really nice and balanced way. But it's been a lot of years and hard work. Like when COVID happened, we were in a cottage home and we never left, and we just built a business. Like we had no balance. It was just like here working like 18 hours a day. And we fast tracked it, right? So a lot of people say, wow, HealthyBud's only 4 years old. Like what you guys did in that period of time took us 8 years. It's like, well, because the COVID years weren't normal years.
No,
Like
not at all. Not at
we
all.
just hunkered down and just tried to take it off the ground. And I'm very lucky to have, my partner Kyle, who's one of the other co-founders. He's incredible. And he's, the left brain and the right brain, and we're very yin and yang. And a lot, I don't take credit for the inception of this brand and at all. I'm an important part, but a lot of credit needs to go definitely to
Yeah,
him.
I think we could probably talk for another chunk of time with regards to managing partnerships, business partnerships, and
Yeah.
personal relationships, because that's another minefield and maybe the subject of another podcast article. But the
Probably.
the one things that I'm hearing, so you had a plan, you had a vision, you stayed true to your heart's desire, which was the entertaining, but you listened to the advice of your friends and family to say, hey, you need something else, you need something to back you up, and you
Honestly,
you, you put the work into it.
I wouldn't say that that was a part of it. Like nobody told me to leave what I was doing and start Healthy Bud. It was really an accident. It just organically unfolded. So I think
No, I'm talking about the skills that you gained that put you
Mhm.
in a position that when the pandemic struck and you had this business in front of you, you had the rigor, you had the knowledge, you had the understanding of what it took to get a business going, and you took it, you used it. And don't you say, oh, we're all sponges. There's plenty of people who will learn stuff and forget it. So give yourself credit that you learned it, but you also saw opportunity to apply it, and
Mhm.
you did. You took the
I
step
think
to do it.
I think an important part of the story too is like we were in a state, we were so naive. Like when we had the idea for Healthy Bud, we had no idea what we were getting into. And I think that's like a really important thing to touch upon because I didn't know, like, okay, here is where I'm going to just put on my business hat and like I know what it's going to require of me. Like, not at all, actually. I think over time, like it was within me to be able to handle it, but I did not know what I was getting into at all. And I actually didn't plan to be involved to the extent that I'm involved today. So,
Mm-hmm.
me, the lesson was like going with the flow and not getting in your own way. Because if I was in my own way and said, well, no, I I'm just a singer and that's who I am, I wouldn't have allowed myself to even thrive in that environment. But I actually noticed myself enjoying this new new experience and said, hold on, like that took me a long time to kind of grapple and realize like, hey, you might be a really good fit for this and let's see how you can thrive there. So at the beginning, I really, really was just like, I think that naivete at the beginning was so important for starting a business because if you knew how much work it would be, you wouldn't start a business. That's the thing. Like if you know, you're not touching it with a 6 foot pole. That's my take. Like if oh my God, I have never been so stressed and worked so hard in my life. But then you see the people the other end that are buying your product, especially if you're in a CPG, like a consumer product goods, and like and you know your customers, you're like, you realize like people need what you're making, and then you feel this attachment, this connection, and you work for them. But at the beginning, it was like we fumbled into it, and it was all of our first businesses, so you just kind of figure it out as you go, and it was a lot of fun, like the early stages. And that's important too, like to have fun with it because it will get stressful. So if you're not enjoying the beginning, I don't know what part you're going to enjoy. Beginning, it's like the honeymoon phase. Like
Yeah, but
good phase.
give yourself credit. Most businesses don't survive, their first 4 years, especially starting out during a pandemic. So I,
Yeah.
I think that you give yourself credit for the hard work, give yourself credit for the the talent, because you had to do the things necessary to get it done, and in
Yeah.
such a compressed amount of time. That's impressive. So give yourself
Thank
credit for
you.
that.
Thank you. We had, you kind of brought it up before. Just the manpower is important too. Like we were three when we started and we each really had our role and we knew who we could trust with what, and it was a big team effort. And I think that is that's really important. It's just, and we learned this later on in our business too. Like you really want to know who you're getting into business with, because it's super, super risky. A lot of reasons that businesses don't succeed in the first 4 years is because of founder disputes a lot of the time.
Mhm.
Um, we experienced our hardships there as well. And you grow through what you go through, but that's something like we wouldn't have been able to get off the ground without each of us in our respective positions. And that
Mhm.
synergy worked really well for like phase one of the business, the startup phase. There's like the growth phase and there's a scale up phase, and some people are meant for different phases, right? And again, self-awareness, like
Yeah,
knowing.
yeah, your organization is going to change as you go through those phases.
For sure.
100%. Sometimes the founders evolve and grow, and sometimes they need to move into other things. So yeah, and there's
Yeah,
no
move in.
wrong, there's no right. It's just a question of
100%.
your design.
Move into other things, grow or move out, right? Like all of it is okay. But I think the learning lesson for me, if I can impart, something to you or young entrepreneurs, is doing the work at the beginning to ask the hard questions and to understand what everyone's vision of success looks like, or what everyone in the team, like what do they want, why are they in the business, what is the goal, is there that synergy in the alignment, and do you have all the right contracts in place so that all of the hard ugly work is done at the beginning, so if things don't work out for whatever reason, you can fall back on something that's pretty, like.
Guys, I did not set her up for this at all, but one of the things that we pride ourselves in Action Coach is we try to make sure that people have their vision, mission, values, all of those core things done up front. We get a
We
lot
did
of
not.
pushback
we,
sometimes, yeah,
we did not
but
do that. We jumped in and we were just like, let's go, let's do this, and just you know went straight forward, and just focused on. It was very, like, you're very reactive at the beginning of a business, because you don't really know, if it's your first business, you usually don't know what you're doing, so it's not like you know exactly what to do first and second. And
if you
so
were to go back, would you say that that's the work that kind of work would have helped to get done early on?
yeah, yeah, but you know what? Like, I think people change too. Like, it depends on the age that you are when you start a business, right? Because
Mhm.
if you start it when you're 40, or if you start it when you're 20, like you're a
Yeah,
very different person. And I
yeah.
don't, I would argue that yes, we could have done those exercises, but like how sometimes you just need to go through what you need to go through. And I wonder if our emotional maturity level would have been even like strong enough to actually give like the accurate answers. Like, they're hard conversations, like to answer them really honestly. Some people like don't even know, so you just kind of put down whatever sounds good. So like, yeah, maybe it would have helped, but
Yeah, those things are never static, by the way. So when you
no,
when you form a company and you're in your 20s and you revisit your
right,
vision and your mission and your values like a year later or 2 years later, it definitely has to be redone. It's never
right,
a one and done thing because,
good
as
point.
we said before, people grow, people change, the environment changes, the market changes. Right
Um,
now, you're into pet food. Who knows what you'll be
yeah,
into in 2, 3, 4, 5 years? You might be
and
into something completely different.
also, like, we as a people have gone through the craziest, like, universal experience, which was the pandemic, right? Like, that changed people too, and people's priorities changed. Like,
Mhm.
life happens, but I think what it could all boil down to is actually communication. That's it for me. Like, if there's one thing that I would have done differently, is employed better communication um, tools, or
Mhm.
had more um, almost like business therapy of sorts.
Like
Um,
maybe business coaching?
well, there's coaching, and then there's also like business therapy, right? I wonder if
Mhm.
they cover like the similar topics, but it's also tough. Like, if you're going to business with a friend or a
Or a
life partner,
partner, like a life partner. Yeah.
yeah, they're
Yeah,
very
it's tricky territory.
different dynamic, right? And different conversations to have. And it's also much harder to have honest conversations because one might not want to insult the other. And it's just, it's like muddy waters
And
for
when do you
sure.
turn it off, right? When do you turn work off and life on, right? Making those switches, having boundaries around those things is important.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
But you had a good example. You told me your parents were in business together. So I think that kind of gave you a little bit of road mapping earlier on, I would imagine.
Yeah, and my grandparents as well. More
Oh,
my
wow.
grandparents. Yeah, it's been I've just seen it work. And a lot of people said like, never go into business with
Ah,
mm, you know, someone that you care about. But like for me, what I would say is like I would never recommend it. But if someone was like, oh, we've got this, I wouldn't be like, check yourself. I would say,
it's work. It adds an extra dimension, but it is possible to manage. I mean, if your relationship is good and you work well as a team in your relationship, then it follows that you should be able to work well, in your business. Not always, but I mean, I think the two cross over. I've never met people that are horrible in their relationship but are great in business together. That I've never
no,
seen.
I I think when you know, and at least for the case with Kyle and I, like we've been together for 11 years now, and um we went into business, I think maybe 6 years into our relationship. And when we were 3 years in, we had business ideas together, and like we never did them, but we always knew that like we were meant to do
Just
something.
percolating in the background.
Yeah, and we didn't know what it would be because like he doesn't have any experience in the entertainment and music world, and like I wasn't, my mind wasn't even anywhere else. But we actually had an idea for a cereal bar, which is now a cool thing. We had called it Out of the Box, and we had a whole business plan and everything. It was in 2016, and it was so cute. We were traveling in London together, and we were like, this could do so well in Montreal, and we had this whole idea, and it didn't end up turning into anything, but we just knew in
It's
our,
like a practice run.
well, we were just like this. We, at the core, we're such good friends, and we have so much just base level respect for each other
That's
and
important. Yeah.
communication skills that we're like, and we're so different and complementary that we're like, we, but similar in important ways that we can just create magic together. And we just knew that in our hearts. So people would be like, don't do it. And we're like, okay, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
We know we have what it takes, and we've always known that. Doesn't mean it's easy, and doesn't mean we haven't had our fights and our moments, but at the core, we're extremely, extremely strong. And that's why we got married, right? Like it's very rare to find somebody that you can actually do that with, which is why I don't necessarily recommend it. It's just I would recommend like doing the work to have that self-awareness, to be honest, and say like, is this like a passion thing where it's like, oh, I love you so much right now and I want to start a business with you? Or is it this like lingering baseline, like we've got this, we can crush it together? And I think for us it's more of the latter. And here we are, still going strong
And
today.
you've beaten the odds as far as your relationship is concerned too.
Yeah,
So
we work hard. We
what's
work
next for Healthy Bud and for Bear?
So for HealthyBud, we are, it's an exciting time for us. We're really just starting our scale up phase. And what's next is some more product launches and expansion to the US in a more significant way. We are already in the United States, but it's a very different market, much bigger, and it's just different. So that's what's on the radar. And of course, always, we're a very proud Canadian brand. So really like continuing the expansion in our homeland. And that's what's going on there. Some product launches and some interesting fun partnerships. And then with my with my artistry, more like cool custom events. So I'm I didn't really speak too much about it, but what I do is I work with planners and clients to bring this really custom live performance event, from like whether it's just me on stage up to an AP band. I'll work with them to help bring their vision to life. So one event I'm doing soon is this kind of Parisian French speakeasy kind of circus theme. Kind of think Gatsby. So I create these custom sets. I sing in 3 languages. So I'm looking to just work with more clients that like to think outside the box and
Wow.
bring a live entertainment aspect to their event that they haven't seen before. But yeah, I'm a little bit more voice
If
acting.
people want to learn more, where do they go? Where they go? Where do we learn more about HealthyBud, and where do we learn more about Bear?
HealthyBud, so www.healthybud.co or at HealthyBudCo on Instagram. And with my artistry, it's This Is Ver, so ThisIsver on Instagram, or thisisver.com to see kind of how my two worlds kind of, they don't really collide, but how they coexist.
Yeah, I'm sure you're not. Bringing any HealthyBud snacks on stage with you when you're singing. I'm sure that's
No, but all my band members and clients that have dogs always get spoiled. I will.
That's
A lot
cute.
of the people, some people do know, so it's kind of funny. I've actually done events where people in the crowd were like, "Wait, aren't you the founder of Healthy Bud?" I'm like, busted.
Do you have any treats with you? Do you have any treats with you?
Always have treats in my car. Always have treats in the car. I like being the treat lady. I love dogs. Dogs are the absolute best things on this planet. So if whatever we can do to make them, we didn't even chat too much about it, but like what we're doing with HealthyBud, I'll just mention really quickly, is we're helping our dogs thrive with superfoods and really amazingly powerful ingredients that are not so common in the pet space. So we call it functional nutrition for dogs. So we'll bring things like reishi, medicinal mushrooms, lion's mane, ashwagandha, L-theanine. We'll bring
Yeah,
turmeric.
it's amazing. I visited the website, and it's like health food for dogs. It's
It
amazing.
is. And the dogs love it and they thrive on it. And it's a real thing. It's real. When they
Yeah,
once they
absolutely.
healthy bud, they're just like they know the good, and then they're onto it. So it's really nice to be able to help them just make mealtime that much more exciting. And hopefully, we're too young to see it now, but hopefully help the quality of life and their lifespan expand.
100%. Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Well, Dana, this has been amazing. I really can't wait. There's a ton of subjects we didn't touch on that we probably could do in future podcasts. So I really appreciate your time and a lot of great insights that came out of this that our audience can glean benefit from. The communication, follow your dream, have some structure, have some base, and be willing to take risks, but manage that risk. Be realistic about it. Have good communication, and I can tell from the way you do things, you don't give up. So that's amazing.
Thanks, George. I appreciate you taking the time for reaching out and just chatting with me on this Wednesday morning. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Bye, George.